We're here today to talk about the future of the NFL, its current state, and where it's going. You're listening to The Future Jam. And I'm joined today with Harrison the Great. I'm calling you Harrison the Great today.
Wow! A compliment?
I'm in a good mood. I'm in a good mood. So I'm saying you're the greatest.
This is the greatest. That can't be topped now. Wow.
No,
that's such an honor.
And also with us today is Nate
the Great.
The Great.
Okay, yeah. That actually works.
But not the greatest.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Not the greatest.
Harrison the Great, it's okay, but Nate the Great, that's
true.
That's who I am.
It just rolls off the tongue.
Sometimes when I don't have good days, I go by Nate the Okay. Nate the slightly below average, but Nate the Great works today. I'm feeling good.
And he is from Lunchroom fame.
I am, yes.
He eats lunch with me every single day.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. And he has to hear me ramble on about whatever I'm talking about that day and see my face get beet red and see me get angry about something.
It's a daily occurrence. It's wonderful, really. I keep telling them, and people that are listening here on iTunes and wherever else, make sure that you put in the reviews that you want a segment of Mike Says No. All right, I'm gonna come out front and I'm gonna say this right now. I want something where Mike just gets mad for a good 5 minutes. I think 5 minutes would work of just Mike just ranting about anything.
Is this
on his
something
mind.
that also needs to be on video, or does it do it justice with
I don't hate
just
the idea.
Sound?
I think the video would work well. I think you could post the video to your YouTube page, social media, and whatnot. I'm telling you, we're growing the Future Jam right here.
Mike is about to say no right now, I think.
Mike says no to Mike says no.
We're talking shop here, guys, and the listeners are probably wondering, where's my football? You guys are fumbling the intro.
Oh, I like it.
You guys are fumbling it, and they're wondering, will I be able to watch NFL in 10 years? Will I be able to watch my precious Bengals lose 10 games? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
let's hope it doesn't go that bad.
You will be able to. Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm going to go out there right now. I'm going to say football is going to be around as long as the United States of America exist.
That scares me.
So that's like 20 years?
Oh well, it depends. And when you look at the ratings of the NFL, you better hope that I'm not right.
Yeah.
Nobody knows why these ratings are tanking. So the ratings are dropping by a large margin, like large enough numbers where they're taking notice and they're actually a little bit afraid. And they're like, okay, maybe this will save the ratings. Maybe if we add in touchdown celebrations, people can celebrate again. Maybe people will start watching.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody scores touchdowns.
Well, not if you're a Bengal fan, at least now.
Maybe they should encourage the kickers to do celebrations after they make a three-pointer.
Sometimes they do.
Do they?
I think. Well, I mean, like the idea, or like a punter, for example. Like when a punter puts a really, really good one on like the 5-yard line going out of bounds. Like the punter sometimes, because he gets no credit. I mean, how often do you hear about the punter getting any credit? I mean,
Not very often.
He's got to do a little shimmy. He's earned it.
The only time you hear anything about the punter is if he makes a beautiful tackle and saves a touchdown or something like that.
Or the rare, fake punt pass or something along those lines. But ratings are an issue though, and while you say that no one really knows how it's going, I don't know if I agree. I think people have a general idea, at least, of how NFL ratings. We see where they've been. All right, in the recent past, where they're still. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we may talk about them falling a little bit, maybe 3%, 5%, 14%. I've even seen some numbers, but it's still the NFL. It's still king as far as ratings go. It's like when people tell me that ESPN, for example, has lower ratings, and we can get into, and I'm sure we'll get into a lot of that here later on. So we'll get plenty of our Jamal Hill talk in. So don't worry, folks. But ultimately, the NFL, why is it down? Is it down because of politics? Is it down because of what? Is it down because of medical issues or what?
I think there's a lot of things, but one of the things that I'm actually pretty encouraged about is the fact that NFL is trying to branch out into other countries finally.
Okay.
And so they're doing a lot of things in Europe right now. Mm-hmm. And so when you're trying to expand like that, your priorities have kind of switched, and so some things have kind of gone by the wayside, and I think that it's kind of an ebb and flow, honestly. And so if we can get the football culture, that kind of just like crazy, just violent, kind of just like balls to the wall kind of culture going in Europe a little bit, and show them that, hey, you know what, rugby's fun, but you know what, give American football a bit of a try, and you're gonna see some like real fun. Okay, I think that it will catch up, and if it really catches on, and we start to get actually a professional team from Europe that we can actually compete against, I mean, that could just blow things up. I don't know.
Is there any credence to that? Do you feel like, to me, when I think about it, whenever they force like football into new areas where it wasn't originally at, people tend to like push it away for some reason. So like when they moved into Los Angeles, they moved 2 teams into Los Angeles.
That's too many in my opinion, but go on.
Yeah, and the people aren't showing up to these games. Like the first opener game for the Chargers drew 27,000. No, I think 22,000.
Yeah,
people.
they have a hard time filling out a 27,000. I mean, the Cubs get more than that in a Wednesday game than the Chargers did on their primetime matchup. But you can't have that. I mean, even I know it was against the Dolphins, not as many people want to watch it, but it's a new thing in Los Angeles. You got to think there are enough people in one of the biggest cities in all of America that they would be able to field at least 27,000 people. Just not happening.
To be fair, though, they do sell out every game in London, I believe. And they do sell out every game in Mexico City when they play in Mexico City as well. So I guess there is fandom there. But I'm not sure if that's enough to, like, those are just 2 major cities. I'm not sure if that's enough to really make up the difference in lost.
Gosh. How cool would it be to have a Mexico City team? I would love to see a Mexico City team or a London.
Do you think there would be a team in Mexico City before there would be a team in, say, Toronto?
Oh my gosh, that's
because
a good question.
Personally, I mean, obviously, Mexico soccer is still king, and it will be, at least as far as I think, for the foreseeable future. But obviously, the Canadians have the Canadian Football League. Would you guys think that there would be a team in Toronto? Or, I mean, I doubt Calgary or Alberta would have something like that, but maybe something north of the border.
Well, the problem is if they're having this much trouble with ratings here, how are they going to really expand a product that's kind of contracting right now? And here's something I was just kind of thinking about today, and there's not much like data on this or anything, but I feel like as a culture, we're going away from cable subscription, and we're going away from like just that TV model in general. And football itself is tied completely to cable TV.
Yeah, that's a good
So
point.
the more people who unsubscribe from cable TV, the harder it is for them to access their games. And if you try to watch, say, like a NFL game on, say you have the what's some of the digital online subscriber cable
the
companies?
Season passes.
Yeah, sure.
And
NFL season pass. Yeah, that's usually the big one that a lot of people use. But the problem is it doesn't cover your in-market games.
No, it doesn't cover a lot of things. You have to like run like a huge spreadsheet and find out like, okay, if I have this service, I can see these games, but I can't see these games. If I have PlayStation Now, the cable provider from PlayStation, I can see these games from Fox or these games from ESPN, but I can't watch these games from NFL Network.
That's already way too much thinking that I'm ready to put
sure.
into.
Yeah, I don't want that in my
sports.
football. Yeah. I want keep it out of my football. I want beer. I want wings. I want pizza every now and then, usually late in the afternoon, and I want violence on my television.
That's right.
And that's it.
But I feel like the NFL kind of knows this problem exists, because last year they were putting Thursday night football games on Twitter live.
Yes. Yeah.
So last year they were like,
move.
well, let's try this, try our hand at this. This year they're putting Thursday night games on Amazon Prime. So they know that they have this they know cable television's going away, and they're trying to figure out, what are we going to do next? What's the next boat for our what's the next vehicle for our
Yeah, for the next location they're going to land. No, I totally see that too, and that's also kind of why I brought up what I brought up earlier is they're kind of in that evolution where they're kind of taking on a lull because they're going to have to, restructure a lot of their programs that they've invested so much money into for like the cable and the TV kind of programs. And so now they're trying to adjust to the times and the technology and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. It seems like they're making the right moves, and the sport is just so entertaining. You see it at a bar. I mean, it catches your eye. Like I lose so many conversations because it's such an eye-catching sport.
I can't watch it. Like my girlfriend will take me out to eat, and if she takes me out to eat anytime on Thursday night, Sunday, Monday, just forget about it because I'm gonna be looking at the TV probably the entire time. There is really no way around it. I mean, I'm gonna be watching it,
honey.
But my
eyes are here.
We talk about how football is so great, right? And we love the sport, and it's doing so many great things, and maybe thinking about branching out. But why are ratings down?
Well, here's the other thing: is now the relatability of the sport. Okay, now the thing is, we talked about the violence of football. Now, I'm a football player. I've probably had a few too many concussions in my lifetime.
Brain got
Back
rattled
in the
around
day,
a little bit. Yeah.
I didn't know what a concussion was. I just knew it as getting my bell rung. I didn't think that was much of a bad thing, and there wasn't going to be any long-term consequences. Who knows what my IQ could be at this moment if I didn't play football? But here's the thing. The relatability is a bit low. A lot of the people in the stands that are watching the Bengals, watching whatever team is your team, who knows how many people in those stands have actually played the game. And so a game like soccer, a game like baseball, you can go and get a beer league or a pickup game pretty easily without much worry about getting yourself hurt.
I
So
played
do you think,
backyard football all the time, though, when I was a kid.
yeah, but do you do that now?
Tackle or
No.
touch?
Adults do that now?
I mean,
they don't.
I mean,
On Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I mean, I'll play a pickup touch game, and Thanksgiving. Unless it's me and my brother, then we're hitting each other. We're using the truck stick to knock each other down.
It's
But
not accessible.
sure, yeah, and that's fair. But I think at an even bigger level, we have to look at the big issues of football. I mean, the medical stuff. Obviously, the concussion issue is up and down. Have you guys seen the movie Concussion with Will Smith and whatnot?
I didn't see it.
It is.
I lived it.
Tell the truth.
No, I'm just
Telling Roger Goodell to tell the truth about concussions and whatnot, and thinking that we're protecting that information, the truth about concussions, because it would be bad for the sport.
I'm not sure how much of this concussion talk has actually really melted away the viewership. Because I feel like a lot of people who watch the sport, like, it's just another injury.
You're right.
To
They're
them.
like gladiators, essentially. If you want to think all the way back to Roman times, you think the gladiators, they obviously they were getting hurt a lot worse than, a concussion. And people were still, I'm sure, selling out the Coliseum and whatnot to watch these, warriors fight. It's not an issue of watchability. It's an issue of participation. And that participation is going to come much further down the road when moms watch, we love watching the NFL, but maybe with all this concussion stuff, we hear awful stories about former NFL players killing themselves, taking their own lives, taking their own families' lives, doing awful, heinous acts, and usually doing it and preserving their brain while writing a letter saying that, hey, use my brain for, medicinal purposes to study it and figure out what went wrong with me. Junior Seau, a former linebacker for the Patriots, and I think more notably the Chargers, took his own life and ended up preserving his brain in the act to let him. It's
just got
a
real.
real dark topic to talk about.
Thanks, guest.
Well,
You're never
yeah,
allowed back on. Jeez,
Yeah, really.
we're trying to keep things light and funny.
But
No, I'm
that's
just
the
kidding.
truth, and
Yeah,
mother
that's good.
and mothers, and I guess father. I doubt fathers would have as much of a say over that. I mean, that's just I'm generalizing here, but it is what it is. Mothers will watch that and they'll hear this news and they'll understand, what an awful thing happened to these players, and say, well, I don't want my kid doing that. And I guess we can get to that, eventually, a little bit later, talking about the future of football and where it's going to go. I'm worried about right now, Mike. I'm terrified right now because ratings are down because football's getting all political.
Oh, geez.
Do you think it's politics, though?
Oh, yes, it all comes down to politics. It's got to come down to politics.
That's what I don't like, though. So the thing is, don't get me started about politics, but here's the thing. The thing that I don't like about politics is it's seeping into everything right now. And the fact that it's seeping into sports, it's like, okay, sports is like one of those bastions where you're supposed to be able to just like put down those sorts of political views and just enjoy the sport. Did he get a touchdown or not? It doesn't matter if he's a whatever, if he voted for who, this, that, or her, or it, or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's about the performance. And so, I mean, put it into kind of like numbers, like quantify it. Like do you like how much of a percentage do you think politics and just the latest kind of stuff actually has affected it? What are your thoughts?
I would say that the decrease in ratings, I mean, and people may think that this is, kind of a hot take, but I'm going to say that the politics of the sport, everyone likes to throw the Colin Kaepernick thing. That's the big topic, and it has been for almost an entire year. Actually, no, more than a year.
Well, hold on one second. Now, do you mean the politics of the sport or politics of like the governing stuff?
See, okay, so Roger Goodell's another issue.
See, and that's where there's another split. Yeah.
So people obviously last year had the issue with the Deflategate. Tom Brady, who is probably the most. He and Colin Kaepernick are probably the most polarizing figures. You either love him or you hate him. Just like Kaepernick, you either love him and you're totally on Team Kaepernick, or you pretty much hate him.
What's everybody's why is everybody so, I guess, up in arms about this Kaepernick thing? I never figured that one out.
The idea that I have is that they're sick of their escape, which football is. Football is their escape. On Sunday and even Saturday when you're talking about college football, I don't want to think about anything. I don't want to think about the work week. I don't want to think about what's going on here come Monday. I want to think about who the Jaguars, what the spread is of the Jaguars and Titans game, and whether Blake Bortles is going to be able to, throw 2 touchdowns this week. I mean, I have no worries in my mind. And then you incorporate politics into it with, okay, some people say Roger Goodell, is a more corrupt man who thinks that, who puts tougher sanctions on certain teams because they win all the time, for example.
And he's like the head enemies. Of the NFL.
Exactly. Right? So he is the NFL commissioner. And right now he is on contract until 2019. An interesting story came out. Yeah. So, which seems like a long time, but really.
It's 2017.
Yeah.
Sorry,
the end of 2017, even more. But there have been a lot of stories about him and some of the owners of NFL teams trying to impede him getting a contract extension. They're sick of him. The politics come into play. But I don't think that's what people care about. People are very black and white. And in this case, it actually is a matter of black and white is what I'm seeing. So the whole Colin Kaepernick thing, which is, I think, drives this entire situation. So we'll start from the very beginning. Colin Kaepernick, who you hear about him all the time, but what about him? He's with the Black Lives Matter movement, and you guys, go back and listen to that whole protesting racism episode that you guys had. You guys talk about the difference between Black Lives Matter and saying Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Colin Kaepernick is a fan of the movement Black Lives Matter, and that upsets a lot of people. And the idea is, Colin Kaepernick is not the only person that takes a knee during the national anthem. Colin Kaepernick started doing that when he was on the verge of losing his job to Blaine Gabbert. Yeah. Who? Yeah, Blaine Gabbert. So, I mean, a lot of people saw it as a ploy using the media, and the media, just the lapdog media, just eats that up. They love it. They just love tearing this apart. If they can tear football apart, which is a very, very, a majority of the people who watch football are white.
It's too masculine.
And are going to feel alienated.
Violent.
Yeah. Ugh. So any chance they get to tear that apart, they're going to try to, and it's worked. The ratings for media have to be way up, and ratings for football are going to be way
up.
Well,
like you said, you want to watch football, you don't want to hear politics while you're watching football. And when Kaepernick's on the field, that's all they talk about is politics. So it's like we hear about the election time and we hear about this political party and that political party, and then we want to watch football, and then we get inundated again with politics.
Right.
So I could see how that could kind of grade against you a little bit and make you kind of like, hey, this isn't what I signed up for. I just want to be entertained.
Yeah, no, and the other thing is, it almost feels like bullying at this point. Now, the thing is, I played football. I pay attention to football a bit. I'm not a super into the numbers kind of guy, but I just did a brief little search of his quarterback ratings, and now our local team is the Bengals. I kind of compared just our quarterback, who isn't the greatest. He's a pretty mid-range kind of quarterback. This season, oh my goodness, not looking good. But the thing is, comparing his stats with Colin Kaepernick, he beats Colin Kaepernick. And so here's where I'm at is people in politics are talking about sports as if they actually watch sports, and they're making it a political thing and saying that it is a political thing and the NFL has all this stuff against him, when really he's just not as good of a player as these people think he is. That's what I've gathered.
The problem is that he's not playing. So that's what people are going to be starting. Once Colin Kaepernick gets on the field, I mean, I feel like he loses everything, because what if he goes onto the field, say the recent story was that the Bengals, right? Our Bengals are looking at picking up Colin Kaepernick.
No,
I
really?
know, really.
Well,
yeah,
I don't have a problem
breaking
with it,
from
but
CBS
that'd be
News.
interesting.
It would be, and the problem is, Andy Dalton wasn't doing too well, and I feel like they say this about every team that isn't doing well on offense. The Bengals just fired their offensive coordinator. There's serious issues with that because they're a team, and I don't want to keep this too local, but it is a national issue because the Bengals are supposed to be a really good team. Vegas is going to lose a lot of money on the Bengals if they don't win 9 games this year. So, honestly, everyone who put money on the Bengals, which is more people than just the people that live here in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati, care about this. Colin Kaepernick, in my opinion, I wouldn't mind having Colin Kaepernick on the team, at least as a third stringer, whether or not he I don't think he's not better than Andy Dalton. He's not better than their backup in AJ McCarron. And if he came on, this is the gambit that Colin Kaepernick is taking. Because if he plays, say he gets in and he doesn't make any difference on the playing field. I mean, I guess he could try to blame everyone else and say, oh, well, the team was just awful. But everyone is saying that he is the key, and he could play on almost, I'd say, half of the teams. And if he loses and he doesn't do it right, it was all for nothing.
Yeah, so now the big thing is now not like government politics, but just the football politics of it all is, I don't know if people actually realize how the payment structure and the pay structure actually works in football. And it's really ingenious because there's salary caps and all kinds of caps. I forget the exact terminology, but it keeps things fair. So the worst team spends just as much as the best team.
Now there's a cap to how much you can spend, but is there a minimum to how little you can spend? That's the thing.
I don't know all the ins and outs, but basically what I'm getting at is when you have a guy that it's as polarizing as Colin Kaepernick, you really have to weigh your options with the risk and reward of certain people.
I guess when going back to is there a minimum salary? There is. Every player after your rookie contract is the minimum. You can give them a minimum contract. So I guess in theory you could give your entire team minimum contracts, and whatever that would add up to would be the minimum salary. Gotcha. So that's I guess the floor of the salary basis. But you're right about Colin Kaepernick. I mean it's still a business at the end of the day, and fan implications on top of, is he going to ask for a lot of money, or is he going to ask for just like the salary minimum? Right. I mean, there's a lot more that goes into it than what a lot of people see face value.
Yeah, so not just politics and like actual politics. Yeah. There's football politics, like you were saying. And I think one of the things that might be driving down ratings is the constant rule change lately.
That's another one. It does get frustrating. I guess I'm from the old school when I think, when I see all these, every scoring play is reviewed and it just makes the game longer and longer and longer. And it was like a 1-yard run into the end zone. Anytime, if you're watching a game in 2005, even like 2012, it's not reviewed. If it's a score, it's a score. If the coach really wants to make a stink of it, he can throw the red flag and challenge it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't see the point, but there are a ton of rule changes going, flip-flopping on the whole, as you mentioned earlier, the celebration rules. I mean, it can kind of get annoying as a fan watching.
And all the rules changing, it's made these games longer, like you've said. And people have like a set amount of time they can watch these games and a set amount of attention span. Mm-hmm. And as these games get longer, there's more commercials, and eventually you're just like, enough is enough. Like, how many commercials can I sit through between plays, or between like them reviewing a fumble or
right. And that's one of the good things about, like, I've recently been getting more and more into soccer, and the cool thing is, like, they run the entire half out. It's not play by play, and like there's all those like stop, start, stop, start, stop, start. And the thing is, it's like, with the whole review thing, man, there's some bad calls in soccer, and they don't have reviews. So it's like, I wonder if reviews in soccer would make things better, or was it better when there weren't reviews in football?
It's got to be an inexact science. That's my idea. So, looking at the future of just pretty much all sports, do you give it up to robots essentially, or robots or all video angles and whatnot to make sure that every officiating call is correct? Balls and strikes in baseball, for example, that's the classic one that people talk about.
Gosh, yeah.
Call me old school, but I think that the umpire should be part of the game. That inexact science of, if it's close, it could be a ball or a strike. Just same thing with getting close to the end zone or a first down.
Do you think these constant reviews, take away some of the emotion of the games? Because when they call like a bad call, or like when they make like a call that you might not like, it gets people fired up and they get all like excited. But then when they review a play for 5 minutes and then they finally come back. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Wow. They figured it out. They watched what they saw on the TV. Good job.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Like, football is an emotional game, and of all the sports, I've tried just about every one except for ice hockey. And of all the sports, football is by far the most emotional, because from one play to the next, it could be the difference of light and day, basically. You could go from, like, I played cornerback, and so I could let a receiver catch a 30-yard pass on me, and I just be like, son of a gun, I'm gonna get this guy back next time. The next play, I freaking crack him in the ribs, and then the third play after that, I get a pick six, and then the whole tide is changed. And so that's one of the really cool things about football that no other sport, well, I guess other sports have, but gosh, the emotion. I'm getting fired up just thinking about it.
You are? Yeah, I know. But really, like, as like all football guys, like, we start like sweating when we start thinking about, the game of football, cracking ribs. And then you think, why would moms not want their kids playing the game? I have no idea.
You want your kids tough. You don't want to be a bunch of floppers, football players.
Breaking skulls.
No, sorry. Soccer players.
Grass fairies.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
That's a good way to put it.
Oh,
but
my gosh.
No, I mean, but, that will be an issue down the road. But the politics of that surround the sport, when they shouldn't even be there, are really what is driving these ratings down. And that, just in the public's mind, makes football less important, which then makes it seem like an unnecessary evil to mothers, which then don't let their kids play and eventually lead to the end of football. And that's a slippery slope that we're taking, but that's kind of the way that it seems to go. And you see that with Jemele Hill, with what she says on on her show, was it E60 or what, or M60 or something like that, or E6, I'm not even going to try to remember, on ESPN. And Mike, you and I were talking about it briefly before the recording of the show. This is a prime example of politics, of the whole stick to sports idea. Just broadcasters, commenters, stick to sports when you're talking about sports. Don't try to infuse politics, because it's bad for ratings. But this is the beautiful thing about capitalism. People, the market, honestly, don't. I mean, it sounds
love
funny,
capitalism,
but the market is going to tell. If people don't want to listen to Jemele Hill or Colin Kaepernick or whomever talk about their issues that are obviously important to them, it's just the wrong place at the wrong time, they're not going to watch. And those ratings are going to go down. And that's just the fact of the market. So Jemele Hill, for everyone who is unaware of what happened, Jemele Hill, who is a black female sports broadcaster at ESPN, sent out a tweet just about a week ago saying that Donald Trump is a white supremacist. I mean, that's a pretty big call right there. I mean, from someone who isn't in the political game, who isn't, doesn't really have a stake in that fight. Although she may disagree, because she, claiming to be a black woman, she thinks that Donald Trump has some sort of vendetta against her. Personally, I don't think that was the right way to go about it. I think if she had said maybe, he panders to white supremacists or something, maybe it would have come off as better. Still politically charged, though.
It's one of those things where politics doesn't have a place. That's really what it comes down to.
Just get it
Whether or not you believe what she said or not, which I would not, it doesn't have a place with sports. Can you please just talk about the players? I mean, Really? That's what it comes down to.
They
Like,
say
it gets
people
me
don't
so
want to see
annoyed.
highlights, but honestly, I would love to just have like an ESPN where it was just all highlights
That's
all day long.
ESPN Classic.
Yeah,
Hello.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, from even if it's not like recent highlights, it could be a highlight from 1980.
Okay, kind of getting back to my hope in this game is even thinking about the best of the best, Joe Montanas and the Jerry Rices and all these just freaking monsters of the sport. The people that we have playing football right now are the best ever. So the thing is, that gives me hope for the sport because as far as the sport goes, we have the best of the best right now. And so we should remember to enjoy it and not get distracted by this other stupid stuff.
But these players that are the best ever, they're dropping out. They're saying, "Hey, I don't want to play to the length of time that I could play because I'm afraid of the concussion, the CTE deal."
Has anyone dropped out early for that?
Indeed, they have several.
Really?
That's a
news
lot of
to me.
players are starting to retire before age 30. Calvin Johnson, who some people say is the best wide receiver ever to play the game for the Detroit Lions. Obviously, he retires when he's 29. Just got kind of sick of. I mean, again, he played for the Detroit Lions, so I can't really blame him. But still, I mean, the man could have played for several more years, maybe won a Super Bowl eventually in that time. As a wide receiver, your career is not even half done when you've only played for 7 years in the league. He made his millions. He wants to keep his brain intact. He's getting the hell out, and it's working out for him.
That's a good move. And I watch a lot of the MMA and fighting and whatnot, and they're starting to do that too. It's like they're trying to be a little bit more exclusive about the fights that they take because, okay, football has some issues with brain trauma. Well, fighting does too.
A sport where you get pummeled in the head time after time after time. It's going to have some implications.
The goal is to cause brain trauma. You have some issues. And so that actually gives me more hope. I'm a pretty optimistic person. So, good for them to making good decisions.
But our top men are designing helmets, and they can't solve this problem. Top guys.
Oh, yeah.
Top guys
You're
are
right.
trying to make these helmets to prevent concussions, and they can't figure it out.
Let's talk about that equipment.
But the thing is what if we went the rugby route and just got rid of padding and got rid of helmets? Would that maybe solve some of the issues?
I think that that was one of the ideas that I've heard, at least as far as maybe not get rid of all padding, but to protect at least the vital organs and whatnot. But the head, a big problem with NFL players is that they lead with their head when they make a tackle. For example, they want to they want to get on Sports Center. They want to make sure that they have that big hit that everyone watches and says ooh and ah to. So they lead with their head, and now it's illegal. Granted, in the NFL,
It's called spearing.
Yeah, spearing or targeting is another way. I think that's the penalty term. For example, if a defensive back isn't looking at the wide receiver coming across the middle, and the wide receiver lowers his head and just creases the defensive back. Hines Ward for the Pittsburgh Steelers was just crucial at doing that. He was good at doing it, and it was legal at the time. So he was really like a punisher over the middle of the zone.
Because I think they're saying that if they take that helmet away, people won't lead with their head because they'll be more guarded. They'll protect themselves a little bit more. And sure, there's gonna be some wild ones out there that are just gonna drive forward.
Like,
but they're gonna learn. They're gonna learn from hey, maybe this isn't smart.
Right.
And I feel like that we're gonna learn to protect. If we switch to this type of system where there's less paddings, no helmets, we're going to learn to protect the players are going to learn to protect themselves more.
One of the interesting things, and I'm kind of going back to fighting with this one, is the fact that in fighting, when people are training, they use headgear and pads and all this kind of stuff. And what people are starting to realize is the extra padding, when you get hit in the head with one of those padded helmets, it actually causes more torque on your head. And if you think about it, you've extended the radius of your head and your skull and all that kind of stuff by 3 inches.
That's
okay.
true.
So now think about the helmets in NFL. That's going to extend the radius of your head by 3 inches. So when you also take away the size of these pads and things like that, you also have a lot less room and all that kind of stuff to allow the physics of being destroyed physically to work against you.
I guess the padding adds weight, and you get a little bit of extra momentum behind you with the extra weight of the padding and the helmets and all of that. Yeah, it could be one of those things that could help out a little bit, but I'm not sure it'll really mess with the ratings that much. And I'm not even sure like if the whole concussion thing right now is affecting the ratings all that much. But let's take a second and peer into the future and just to see where this concussion talk will actually like truly affect it down the line.
All right, I'm getting my crystal ball out. Let's talk about this.
Look into what's in there, and it all comes down to mothers.
Moms.
Yeah. So moms, in my opinion, are the reason why football may die. And while that may sound awful, I love moms. Moms are great. I love my mom. She protected me my entire life. But if she found out that football was, if she knew that football was incredibly bad for me, and then it was going to kill my brain one day if I played all the way through high school and through college, and maybe I could have made it to the NFL, but if I had played for a significant amount of time, I would have had some serious complications that came along with that. We're going to have to wait. It's not going to affect ratings right now, but give it some time, and eventually through maybe not this generation, maybe not even the next generation, but the generation after that, only certain players are going to be able to play the game. Okay, and those players with a smaller pool, because moms are going to be holding their kids back saying, hell no, you're not playing football and getting your brain turned into, mashed potatoes. Yeah, exactly. You're going to go play, soccer or golf or baseball or something where you're not a non-contact sport or not as much of a contact sport.
And I've already seen this taking effect.
Sure.
I've been Googling this a little bit, and they said that participation in football in certain areas has actually gone down. If you ask like famous football players right now, a lot of them say that they're going to hold their children out of playing like football when they're kids, like pee-wee football. I played pee-wee football, and you do get like moved around and jostled, and I remember getting the wind knocked out of me pretty hard when I was like 10, 11, 12 years old, and you get hit pretty hard at that age, and that's when your body is developing, and that can throw a lot of wrenches into the whole developmental part of your brain.
Right. And it's just not a good cost benefit kind of thing. Because, okay, even if you play football, which I think you should just because I had a great experience, don't expect to go pro. Okay. The thing is, it's not a good investment is really what it comes down to. Pro sports is just not a great investment in general, but at least with baseball, golf, and soccer, you're not completely blowing your brains out every single play. So, yeah, man, it's up in the air. I mean, I want to see the sport like take off, and I think it will. There's plenty of people that are just like, you know what? I don't really care. I'm going to put my like kids into it. I'd love to see a future son or daughter play football.
well, just to think of how expensive running a football program is. Like the school, you do a podcast on Berea College.
I do. Yep.
Sports, and that school's small, and they don't have the funds to run a football program. No. And the thing is as kids drop out or as parents stop signing their kids up for football, those funds are going to dry up. And they're going to invest those funds into the sport that the kids are actually playing. So as these funds dry up, these football programs are going to have less money to pay for competent coaches. So there's going to be less competent coaches. There's going to be less kids playing the sport. And then you brought up a very excellent point, and I liked it a lot, Harrison. And I know you're surprised because you don't.
I rarely do that.
But think about it this way: if you go to if you play through high school and college, a lot of people are trying to get to that next level of the NFL, but it's so rare that you get into the NFL from high school and college, and you're leveraging your health to play in the NFL, and you might not ever get there. The odds are pretty dire.
No, extremely stacked against you.
Stacked against you.
You have a better chance of becoming a world-class doctor or lawyer than you do becoming an NFL or NBA player.
Hearing about all these health issues, parents are going to keep their kids out. People who are more like thinking about it a little bit, thinking about their future, they're going to say, hey, I'm going into high school and college. Maybe I should choose a sport that is better for my health for my own future. Like people are going to start thinking of themselves, and sure, money is tempting, and there's going to be those people who want the fame and accolades and money that the NFL brings. They don't care about they don't care as much about the health portion. Like the health is nothing compared to the fame, accolades, and money. But there's going to be a lot more people slowly as we go on that are going to sway the other way where they're like, yeah, health is more important to me.
It should be. It definitely should be. And it's like, how often do you, like, I would love to, like, follow up with some college stars that didn't quite make it to the NFL. You know, like, what are their lives like? Were they able to, like, set themselves up to be good and be able to, you know, take care of themselves? Did they actually get a good education, or did they just get, like, free A's, B's, and C's to, you know, make it to the next game? I mean, that's something we really should be talking about, or thinking about at least.
Yeah, definitely thinking about. And in the future of football, Mike, I think you summed it up pretty well, that I don't like using slippery slope arguments, you know, kind of just taking, you know, well, if we start having concussions, then football's going to die. But it's not too hard to see that with fewer players playing in the future means less money toward the organizations, less, you know, not as good of coaches, meaning not as good of an output of players, which means not as many people are going to watch, which means less money for everyone, and eventually it's going to die.
But it might not die out completely. Like, it might just fall down into the area of, like, this ESPN3 sport,
Sure, yeah.
the
Well,
Ocho.
the idea of what we think of it is today, football, do I think that it's going to be at where curling is today, you know, where we just watch it, you know, once every 2 years or once every 4 years during the Winter Olympics? I don't think so, but I think that football may find themselves in a bit of a situation that they're going to have to address, and be it, you know, no helmets at all, or at least making players tighten their helmets. I think that's another issue.
But the thing is, I think they will figure it out. And
I hope so.
I know
I love
I'm
football.
saying all these dire things about it, but I feel like
It's all over. It's all over. No, I'm just kidding.
think about it. It's one of the few sports where it's just one game a week, and it sets it up perfectly for this thing called fantasy football.
Oh, yeah.
It sets it up. It's like one of the most perfect sports ever designed for this fantasy sport type league. So there's so many different ways people can get involved in the sport outside of playing the sport, video games, and so on. I feel like they have time to adjust and save themselves, but like if they keep going down the path they're currently going down without making any serious adjustments, then it will fall off.
They are. Like I said earlier on the podcast, they're trying to reach out to other countries and be like, hey, you know what? Soccer's pretty cool, but you should give American football a try. And gosh, I cannot wait to see another country try to go up with our best. You know what I mean? I mean, look at our freaking NBA. I mean, come on.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
anyone have a chance?
When we play in the Olympics, it's not even fun to watch.
Right.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
just a beatdown.
maybe to close this out is just to the competing sports. Soccer, like you're saying that now, that's one of the fastest growing sports in America. And in the world, it is the biggest sport.
It is. Yeah.
And I feel like that's what's going to maybe supersede the NFL in America.
Ooh, now that's a hot take.
We can kind of see it happening already in the city we live in, Cincinnati. We have a team that's local here, FC Cincinnati, and it's blowing the charts up as far as like attendance.
And that's the relatability that I was kind of talking about. Like, girls and guys, not only have they played it in their past, but they can play it now. And I think that adds a whole lot to its popularity.
So yeah, it just there's just so much, and like you said, with the the free market we live in, there's competition between sports, there's competition between leagues, so much competition, and everything's competing for entertainment. So Netflix, movies, sports, all these companies are fighting over our free time. There's only so much free time we have, and this is the most inundated we've ever been with entertainment in the history of mankind. And there's so many like little things that are playing into why the sport's declining a little bit. But yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said, Nate. Politics needs to stay where it's at in politics. And I don't know. Do you guys have anything you want to close out with? Like, do you want to say a little bit about your podcast real quick?
Sure. Yeah. No, I run a podcast for Berea College, which is about 2 hours south of Cincinnati. It's where I went to school. The idea that I'm trying to bring to the table is that a lot of these small schools don't have any kind of media that goes along with them. Berea College, which is a Division III school in the NCAA, they play a lot of tough teams. They've put together a couple really, really good athletes, and we play some good competition, but we have no coverage. And a lot and I'm sure Berea College is not the only school like that. So what I'm trying to do, and kind of my sports background, is that I've covered essentially every sport there is to cover except for football, which is like my favorite sport to, watch and talk about. One of my favorite sports to watch and talk about. But as far as the climb goes and other podcasts, I'm hoping that as far as I like promoting sports like volleyball and soccer and baseball and other things like that, football is still king. And going back to your point about FC Cincinnati and the Bengals and the Reds all competing for our time and our attention, whilst FC Cincinnati may be selling out and having, 20, 25,000 fans at their games, which is huge, and it's loud and it's fun and everyone has a good time, the Bengals don't have to sell out and they still have 50,000 in their stadium. So football is still king every Sunday and every week during the year. Whether or not it falls off, I mean, that's all up for speculation. And is ESPN going to be the reason why they fall off? Maybe it'll play a part of it.
I think ESPN's going to fall off.
They
Long
may,
before
they
the
may,
NFL.
and that's a talk, for another day. 'Cause, with Disney owning them and whatnot, that's still a long way down the road.
I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm, yeah, a lot of people don't know. Yeah, the mouse owns ESPN, but
the mouse owns us all.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, but that was bad. But ultimately, is that going to lead to the end of football? I don't know. What's going to end football, if it does, or at least be a deterrent to it, is going to be moms protecting their kids.
Well, thanks for coming in, Nate. We talked a lot of pigskin tonight.
My favorite topic.
Yeah, it's everybody's favorite topic.
So, little known fact, Mike actually refuses to snap shotgun style. He only takes it with the quarterback just right up in there. Did you know that?
That sounds
that
weird.
sounds pretty dirty. We might put the expletive tag on the.
I only snap it.
guidance.
I only snap it granny style.
Okay, there you go.
Granny style.
That's the only way to go.
Two-hand,
right.
long snapping.
Thanks for coming in, Nate.
Hey, no problem,
and
guys.
I'm never thanking you again, Harrison.
Hey.
Follow us at The Future Jam on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and you can join the conversation if you want. I'm not even checking it anymore, honestly.
Oh, I'll start a conversation, all right.
Harrison just starts random conversations with people like, hey, what do you think of music these days?
Well, when we're doing a podcast about music, maybe it's actually a bit relevant. I don't know.